Hello there, tarot friends. I have Justin Michael with me here today. So we're kind of taking a break from the normal thing, but not really, because we're just going to talk more about archetypes. And Justin has a deck to show us, and we're just going to kind of talk through how archetypes relate to the tarot. Obviously, it's infused in the whole thing. But maybe do some little examples and talk about how they link up. So let's see who's here. Excuse me. I've been talking on the phone, which I told Justin I don't do very much, so my voice is worn out.
Hi, everyone.
We have Nancy, Sip Sip, and Chris. Afternoon, bitches. We're happy to have you here. Antoinette, hello. Robin. And Diane is here. Jackie, hello. Perfect. Okay, so let me get a sip here because I can't talk.
Sip, sip.
Yeah. So we're just having a little coffee and cards time today. And I guess, so basically, usually people that come here to like my Sunday 10 o'clock, I'm sure you're going to draw like a few more people that haven't been to the archetypes thing we've been doing, but we've been going through the Kim Kranz deck, and we're like through like the first 10 people, yep. So how she does like people, places, tools, initiations, or whatever. We're like through the warrior, and we've just been kind of looking at one or two or three cards and just kind of talking about like our personal experiences as they relate to those. So that's kind of where we are in our little like exploration of it. I don't call it a study group because I'm just kind of like going through with them. Like it's just kind of like storytelling that we've been doing a little bit.
Yeah.
Speaking of study group, everyone, Chris has the first Marielle today at 11 on Zoom. And then you can do that or Thursday on YouTube, just to let you know that we'll wrap up before the hour so people can get over to that while we're talking about study group.
Absolutely.
So Justin, how, we're all of us here are interested in tarot, but like specifically, how did you come to have particular interest in archetypes, and how do you use them in your practice?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg? Was it tarot or archetypes? And I think the answer is tarot came first because, I was introduced to a deck when I was like 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
I walked into the store. I told the story many times, but I basically had the same experience most people have when they first see the Rider deck or any tarot deck that they connect with. And I got the deck as a kid, and I had it for a couple of weeks, and then I had to get rid of it. But I was always interested in them. I had to get rid of it because of peer pressure. My friends' parents were somewhat religious, not super religious, which is weird, but they had a problem with me having this deck. And so my friend was like, you have to get rid of the deck or I can't be your friend anymore. So I was like, okay. We walked to a sewer well and I threw them down. That's the story. I haven't told
I remember that story, and it makes me sad. But I also feel that it's like, you chose the friend. So that's, really awesome.
Yeah, he's still one of my best friends today, actually.
Yeah.
So, it's like tarot disappeared for a while. It was sort of out of sight, out of mind. But I remember looking at those images and connecting with something in them, like something deeper. They were just so mysterious. And I remember specifically looking at the Hermit Card, with the lantern, and that's visually what I think of when I think of that story. In that store, I think of the Hermit Card, because I remember just thinking like, these are just like really familiar images to me, and I just couldn't explain. And I was obsessed with them, and I thought they had power and magic. And so, so my stepfather, being an artist at the time, he brought them home for me, and that was really cool. And so I had them, and like I said, I had to get rid of them. But years later, you know, I got the Celtic deck in a bookstore around college, I want to say.
Okay.
And so I always had this interest and I always went to card readers. I was always interested. But then I got interested in probably like in my probably early 30s sometime. I started to get interested in like Carl Jung a little bit.
Okay.
And, you know, the unconscious and things like that, you know, thinking about the unconscious. But I really got into it a few years ago.
Okay.
And I decided to get another tarot deck because I was just really interested in, you know, what I was reading, and I was just fascinated with the unconscious. So I think that I approached tarot for the second time, I think, in a very kind of scientific way, like a non-fortune telling way, and then I sort of got hooked on the fortune telling. But I always kind of was interested in fortune telling too. So
yeah,
it's a weird kind of story, but yeah, I mean, archetypes are important. You know, they're everywhere, and like you find like when you go to sleep at night, you have these profound dreams. Sometimes, I mean, I do anyway. I have these really crazy dreams, and you know, it's like Jung and Archetypes. No, I haven't read that book. That's not by Jung. I imagine that Man and His Symbols is the book that I read by Jung and like 3 other people. But yeah, they're just super important, you know. So to me, and interpreting dreams, I think like interpreting tarot, and I remember reading this in Robert Place's book, his first book, you know, when I read it like a long time ago. Interpreting tarot is very similar to dream interpretation. Like that's how I approach it anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you have a dream and you interpret the symbols in the dream. I look at tarot interpretation sort of the same way. You know what I mean?
Yep.
How about you?
I think that's similar for me too. Like a couple things that I'm have really sort of always been interested in, like the more, you know, these have magic and power and it's for fortune telling. But then also had this later, like probably like high school, college, like a lot of people do, like thinking about archetypes through that lens, like maybe the first time we like know what an archetype is, like we know what they are, but like knowing what it's called, you know. And then I think that kind of like spurs this other thing. So I've had people come sit at my table who are like, hey, I'm not being rude, but they're like, I'm not super into this, but I just want you to know that like someone gave me this as a gift and I'm really sciencey and, you know, into psychology or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's, you know, perfect. I'm like, that's fine. I'm like, I won't, you know, go into a bunch of spirit side stuff. I'm like, I'll let you know, like, because I'm not always a channel, like by any means, but I'm like, if someone comes through, I'll just let you know like that they're there, but we'll just keep it to the cards and, you know, basically tell them like, we're just going to be interpreting, you know, these symbols. So and then I've had other people who, you know, are sobbing on the other side of the table because I said something about, you know, this yellow flower is really jumping out to me. And, you know, I feel this mother energy like from this card or whatever. And then, you know, so there's like the 2 types of people and all these things in between. And I love reading for any of them. You know what I mean? I don't, I can just kind of do it either way. Like, it doesn't matter if the person believes X, Y, or Z, like it's cool. I still like would love to read their cards. So I just kind of do this blended thing. And I think a lot of that, I see sometimes people in the community saying, you know, I'm this way or I'm that way, which is fine. But then new people coming thinking that maybe they have to like fall into one of those categories. And I'm like, I just do it all. Like I can have it all and I can read them differently day to day. And I think that's a great thing about them too. Like you could drop cards on the floor and there's still something there for you. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of my bottom line with it. So in terms of archetypes, I think that again, we always know them, but we don't always know what they are. And then once they get this label, we're like, oh, all these things fall into that.
Yeah.
right? Like characters in movies or song lyrics or tarot cards. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like a big mixy collection of everything.
So what do you think an archetype? So like, because I was thinking earlier, it's a kind of hard term to define, really. Like,
It really is.
it's like, so the idea is that you're born with sort of a blueprint for life. It's like sort of like programming software, kind of. And you have these images and instincts and all these things that you when you're born into the world. That in itself is like mind-blowing to me.
Yes.
That there's an underlying sort of programming in us that is, it's like it's just one of the great mysteries of like our being.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have also another part of you, which is the personal unconscious, and the line gets fuzzy. It's like what is the blueprint that you were born with, and what is part of your upbringing, and they kind of mesh together. So I like to play little games with like archetypes where I was getting coffee at the store the other day, and I just remember like looking around thinking, like spotting archetypes.
Yeah.
Like the chatty person, the person that talks a lot, like just like the swindler, the hustler, the hobo, like you'd go outside, somebody hits you up for change. It's like, I hate to, I don't mean that offensively, but that's an archetype, you know what I mean? Like like the wanderer, some kind of thing. And so that's what I do. And then a lot of times with these decks, I'll pick a card and then I'll see how that archetype manifests itself throughout the day.
Yeah. I love that. I was Chris said, I thought you said the Chad. That's an archetype, the Chad. No, the chatty one.
The chatty one.
So we've had a few more people come in. We have Sandra. Hello. Regina is here. Jamie. Hello.
Hi, Jamie.
So, yeah, the other thing I was thinking, I think it was just last night, about how I get really excited. Like, I love tarot, I love Oracle, I love Lenormand. Like, yes, just any cards, right? I bought Rainbow Kipper the other day. That's my first one. So I don't think that I will like fall down a water slide of Kipper things because I'm just super obsessed with Lenormand. But like, I just really like listening to your and watching the interview with Steven. I just felt like, I'm like, okay, I'm like, this dude is just like, I mean, not just like me, but when he was trying to explain his, like that in between space that he has, like accessing that. So I have what's called, I mean, redundantly, but it's called rapid REM. So like I go into REM sleep like within a minute sometimes. It's like really crazy. But I've always kind of thought that that's what that is. So that part didn't like exactly like match up with his because I'm kind of dreaming, but like I can like communicate and stuff in that space. And I can kind of like communicate in my dreams and like make choices in my dreams and stuff too sometimes. So anyway, he was talking about that and I'm like, okay, that's really awesome. Not to say that anyone who makes a deck who has this, you know, I'm going to like buy all their stuff, but I just felt really, he was just super lovely. And I'm like, okay, I want these and I'm going to, you know, check this out. So, and then when he was talking about, it's hard to explain, there's like this thing right here. And I got like chills when he said that. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. I have that thing right here. Like, I don't know, just all these little gestures he was making is exactly what I do when I'm trying to explain to someone what happens. So anyway, it was really cool. And I'm off on a tangent. But
ask him to come on your channel for a chat. That would be cool. That would be interesting to hear you guys talk about it.
That would be
a really nice guy, you know?
Yeah. And he was saying, you know, this is going to be like too woo for some people. And I'm like, no, keep, you know, talking to my computer screen. But
it's always a fine line. But I find that most people like to hear about it, you know?
Right.
In our community, anyway.
Yeah. So basically,
I don't even know why I said that. So it's like a knee-jerk reaction. It's like almost like you're ashamed to talk about some things because of the programming that you have. And I see things like that all the time that I see about myself, and I'm like, you know, I didn't intend that to be like a kind of a shaming moment, but it sort of was a self-shaming kind of thing where you bring something up and you're like, your knee-jerk reaction is to, you know, like, let me just make this clear for everybody. This is woo.
Mhm.
It's not for everybody, but, you know, might interest you, you know.
Right. We tend to do that, I think, and like sort of like dismiss what we say like right after we say it or like qualify it or whatever. But
You know,
and I do sometimes say like this isn't for everybody and that's okay. But usually I do that after I've seen someone else say, you're not the thing you believe is not a thing, which I don't see very often, but sometimes I do. And it's like it doesn't matter, but I just don't ever want to like broadcast to anyone that like their thing is not real, you know? So
yeah.
I don't know.
And you just don't
But
know because you're not that person. You don't have that person's experience. There are a lot of people who have gifts or who claim to have gifts that don't, that take advantage of people. And so
right.
you have that element that has been put on people as sort of like you know, the trickster archetype or whatever. You know, it's
Yeah.
like people take advantage of that. So you know, it has the stigma not by accident. You know, it's kind of for good reason it has it, but it's unfair. Like all stigmas and generalizations, it affects the, you know, the genuine side of it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's just all part of it, like having to, you know, thinking someday maybe if those people like get in the right place at the right time and have like a more genuine experience, then, you know, then that's great.
Maybe
But
on their
and
deathbed, because that's when most people have the most spiritual, like the spiritual awakening. Like when you're facing death, people have a tendency to, you know, confront the
oh
power of
yeah.
and so forth. You know,
Yeah.
it's weird about our culture because like our culture is completely separate. Science and spirituality are completely separate things. But if you look back in like Pythagoras' time, you know, it was actually the whole purpose of science was to sort of like embrace spirituality. And that's what I love about like Pythagorean type stuff. It's like, you know, or sacred geometry and all that other stuff. It's like analyzing like, you know, the 4 points in a square or whatever, you know, like, but like spotting that nature and, you know, thinking about it spiritually and so forth. Like, you know, I don't know. It's just
There's
fascinating.
I remember you talking about that. It was probably a year ago now, like in someone, maybe not that long. My concept of time is really skewed, but 6 months, a year ago, something that you were talking about, like Pythagoras and music and how, like, you know, the spirituality and science thing and how, like, one grows out of the other. They're like intertwined. And I've been looking on YouTube for this video that I listened to back when I was commuting a ton because it just so perfectly described, and I can't remember if it was like a History Channel thing or what, but like about science and medicine coming out of astronomy and astrology, even more specifically, like, and it so like incredibly explains how that like gave way to all these other things, right? And so that before it wasn't so dismissed by people, it wasn't like you said, you know, this completely disconnected thing. It was all one thing. And
Yeah.
people sometimes, I think, assume that I'm just kind of giving cop out answers to things, but it's because I'm always, like, I will always say, like, no, everything is involved in it. Like, yes, if you think that's the answer, then it probably is. And also, I'm telling you this little part of the answer, and that's also the truth. Do you know what I mean? Like, everything is just kind of like one big web to me. So I do have to be careful sometimes to not come across as though that I'm just kind of like laying everything out there, that there's still like meaning to it. And I think I do okay with that, but I'm also a very like, this is all connected in the web. And if you think that, then you're probably right. Kind of, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like, yeah, that's part of it. Like whatever you think about it, you
Yeah.
know, that's part of your path and your blueprint and all of that. So it's
Yeah,
very
it's all
interesting.
very mysterious, and I think like that. I think the part of purpose of life is to connect with the divine and to figure out and think about these kind of things. And I, even from an atheist standpoint, like there still has to be mysteries that intrigue you and meaning. I think meaning is what really lies behind it.
Right. Yeah. So Jamie says the first witch my mom took me to had talent, but not the talent she sold to people. And I told my mom that I don't like games. So yeah, that's very, that's back to that,
Yep.
that whole thing. And in that case, like, I think that's so sad because I have heard Jamie talk about this before, that person, if I'm recalling the correct story, that person, was gifted or, which I just say like open to, receiving or whatever. So then to not use that genuine gift and like try to make it something it's not, there's cases like that too, where it's like if the person would just be themselves, then, then they'd have this positive power.
It's so interesting to think about too, just back to Pythagoras, like the mystery schools and all.
Yeah.
Like what they were doing in the time before Christ, even like, in BC era, like they were vegetarians. They had to study in silence for a number of years. They couldn't speak. I mean, the amount of like the boot camp that they went through to become initiated is just intriguing to me, and it just doesn't even exist anymore. And a lot of that influenced even Christianity. It all kind of evolved, and if you look at aspects of early Christianity, it was taken from that, like the Veil of Silence, for instance, and other stuff. It's really fascinating.
Like on the religious note, I haven't been to church in a while because I lived far away from like the one church that I really loved, or really the two. Like I had like the church where I grew up, and then sort of like my early college and like grad school church. And so like I'm comfortable like going to both of those places, and I've had really good experiences, and I know that there are terrible experiences out there. I've mentioned before on my channel that in high school I went to someone else's church for like teen night or whatever, and it was just this whole spiel about it was supposed to be like a suicide prevention thing, but let me just say that it was like really disgusting and like terrible. And basically saying like, if you have these thoughts, it's already too late kind of thing. And it was just terrible. Right. And that was the moment that I understood about like the spectrum of experiences people could have at a church. Like I was so lucky. Like I was in this like happy little friendly, like we never talked about anything really dark, in like a discriminatory way. Like there was, like, it was just really perfect. And so when I went to this other place, it was just crazy. What is my point? When people are saying, just in case I ever make comments that seem like anti-church, I'm not, but I tend to talk about
the church bell going off. Did anybody hear that? On Sunday, right before Mass, and it's just a church a couple blocks away. But as soon as you started talking about church, the church bell started ringing. It was weird. Go ahead.
That is so funny. I've thought about calling my 10 a.m. spot like Tarot Church, but first I thought that would draw a lot of trolls, and secondly, I decided to pick up the Archetypes thing as the first thing I was doing, so I just went with that. But I've thought about calling this Tarot Church. So nice. I just think sometimes that when like super conservative, like I don't know what I want to say, super conservative churchy people will sometimes knock things like this, right? I've had people like sit at my table and say, I just want to tell you that I'm kind of nervous about this because I was taught that this is wrong, but like I want to give this a chance basically. And so then of course I'm like very sensitive to it, and I go through and I like show some symbolism that probably makes them more comfortable, or I say I have this, I have this angel deck and really it's just messages on cards, like, and kind of talking people through that. So point being, sometimes people make a comment and I'll say, well, when I was in junior high, I used to put on a white robe and carry a candle on a long stick down the aisle while people were chanting and light a candle. I'm like, that's magic. So like, I don't like, there's this like intersection of things. And I'm like, at some point we were told these things are bad and are not part of that. But, you know, and you can choose to believe that or not.
A lot of times is that people just people are control freaks, and they want to control other people's thoughts.
Yeah.
And when it comes to spirituality, it's very much church is about group and community and all, but it's very much an individual path that you take. And even if you read the Bible or the Torah or the Quran, it's a very individual journey. That book is for you and for your connection with that book. It's not about others. And there's so many passages in Christianity that sort of go against the preaching of other people, like evangelizing people. I think it's actually an anti-Christian thing if you actually read the gospel. But but it's just, for some reason, it's like, people just don't have brains in their head, and they just don't think about things like that, like what the Bible actually says. They go by cultures. It's like there's a saying in the Bible, it's like, it's like, tie your own sandal before you worry about your neighbors or whatever. There's a whole lot of wisdom that is very practical wisdom. It's archetypal wisdom in a way, that's exists in almost every faith tradition. So of course you have the people that are they just can't mind their business.
Right.
And that's the problem. That's the root of all evil in this world, is people cannot mind their business.
Right. Right. You can't make your thing everyone else's thing. Like the second church that I talked about is a more like a modern, like what here in the States, or at least in my state, we call like rock band churches. Right. And that's one of them. Definitely. But one of the main reasons that I'm sure I will go there again someday after, pandemic and stuff, now that I live back out this way. But a lot of times I would go because they had like 7 or 8 different bands that would play. They rotate pastors. So it's not always the same person, and it's not always the same band. And I just think that's really cool. And sometimes I would just want to like drink a coffee and go listen to the band, because they were actually, all of them were really good. Just a quick funny story, which I also know that that's not always the case, because I went to a different rock band when my niece was being dedicated, and the music was terrible. I just have to say, I all of a sudden felt like I was in like an episode of South Park, and I looked over at my mom and she was looking at me already, and I had to walk out while the music was happening because I just couldn't deal with it. But anyway, not to be mean or anything, but I've been once again spoiled with my church environment because I came from a place that has really awesome musicians.
Guess what? Like, that's the one thing I will say is, like, I grew up in a very Catholic way. I went to Catholic school. I never stepped foot into a public school until I was in college. And there were nuns and brothers, particularly one brother, that taught us music. And everyone in my class, my graduating class of grade school, plays an instrument. We're all musical. We all have, like, may not do it professionally, but we have, like, who could play the guitar, who can sing. And so it's
right.
Like, and my music is a big part of my life. I was in jazz band in college. I played the trombone. I grew up around music. My stepfather was a professional drummer. I was raised with music in a lot of ways, but it all stems from the church. And a lot of people are like that. It's like Little Richard. If you look at all the big musicians, this is kind of going down a rabbit hole, but they all get their music, even Elvis, like gospels, Jerry Lee Lewis, like they all got it from church. It's so strange. Right.
Yeah. And I think that can be really powerful, because especially from a good environment, that when like the talent is sort of like incubated there, and you have all of these people with their positive intentions, right? I'm not all love and light, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it, right? I don't shy away from shadow. But if you're standing up in front of people playing guitar or singing or even speaking, and all of these people are positively like putting this energy toward you, like that just grows everything. So
Yeah.
it's, again, like I think that's super magic energy. And
Also, you think too, like just about the music thing, like, if you like, it's not often that kids get together and sing together.
Right.
You would do that more often back in the day, but now it's like if you get these kids, they're playing video games, they're not going to want to get together and sing in a group.
Right.
But church does that. Church puts you in a group with the community and has everybody sing together, and that's like a very talk about archetypes. I mean, like the archetype of music. It's like it's just such a powerful thing to be in a group singing together. So I think that has an impact on people, whether they realize it or not. And that's just why it's usually your first experience singing in a group with other people is probably, what it's all about.
Right. No, I love that. So Zane has come in too. Hello.
Hello, Zane.
So I have my little
True, Robin. I just read Robin's comment. Music is vibrational energy, which the energy of the universe is the energy of the universe. What could be more spiritual than that? That's exactly right. And that's why I became fascinated in Pythagoras, because they were all into that, It's like you can hear a note play when you play a chord, you can hear some chords sound happy, some chords sound really sad, like the minor chords. If you play like a G major, it sounds very, very bright and kind of, makes you feel good. And then play like an A minor or
into like sad songs, like for a day, like it's not going to bring me down. It's, like I just love that space. And even using that to kind of like meditate, reflect or whatever. And I dance too. And so I think a lot of it is like my favorite pieces are like the sad ones. And I just find that easier to like get into. Like I'm very happy in my life, but I
like sad music too. I always did.
I just like, I like performing that more. If someone gave me, do you want to be cast in this like happy, jumpy one or this sad one about, it's called Widow's Walk, I'm like taking the sad one always, because.
What's your sign? Are you a water sign, or what is your?
Libra sun, and then 2 fire. I have Aries moon and Leo rising.
Oh boy.
So I don't know, but in like my personal, like how I act is very watery though.
Oh, you probably have other stuff going on too,
Yeah, definitely.
I mean,
Chris said, I remember at my mom's uncle's funeral, there were no instruments, and you would think the priest had said, everyone pick any tune and sing the words along to that. It was a train wreck, but very funny. It's hard when you don't have like a driving or like a unifying point to start from.
I used to go to church a lot because I had a friend who was a priest. He was a Monsignor. He became a really good friend of mine when I was going through recovery. I had a problem with addiction in my like mid to late 20s, and I started going to this church, and I met this priest, and we really hit it off. It was great, but he was like the singer. He loved to sing. I mean. And he sang everything, and he would just sing by himself like all the time. And I'm like, Father, I can play the organ for you if you want. Like, I'll come in early and play the organ. He was like, he didn't want any instruments. He just like did everything a cappella,
Yeah.
And that's what that made me think of. But after he died, I stopped going to church. I just don't have any use for it. I figured out after he died, that I wasn't going to go to church. I was going to see him. And when because he was like a sort of like a spiritual, a hierophant kind of figure, he was a spiritual teacher to me, and very kind of influential, but also a friend. And I would go just to see him, because I have no desire to go to church right now at all.
Yeah, I had a break like that from like the church where I grew up, but it wasn't it was just like that because the pastor that was there left. They were moving and going to a different church, and he was like my pastor like from when I was like 3 years old or whatever. And I was just like devastated. Like his last service was when I was confirmed, and so not like Catholic. It it was a Presbyterian church, but like you would usually like get baptized when you were little, but then like later, like I was like 8th or 9th grade or something, like you make the decision yourself, like if you know, are following this or whatever. And in the confines, that sounds weird to say, but in the context of that church, I agreed to that because I loved it there. And so that was his last service, was my confirmation day. And then he left. So like all of us in that group were just like sobbing, and, you know, we'd like go to summer camp all together, and he was just awesome, you know, and that's exactly right. Father figure. And then he moved to a different church, and like we went a few times after that, but I just wasn't feeling it anymore. And that was the same thing. I'm like, well, I have what I need. And that was just kind of it.
Exactly. It's like you really feel the loss when you get like this new priest that has like a weird personality or just doesn't understand the connection that this person had with people. So let me ask you, how do you use archetypal card, like decks, archetypes, and how does it apply to you in tarot, if you don't mind my asking?
Yeah, no, not at all. I have my little mini here. I've sorted out the majors as kind of like little touch points. So I think that, well, like here's the moon. So a lot of people will have like the first reaction will be like, oh, the moon, that's bad. You know, it's confusion and paranoia or whatever. And I always like back in the day when I didn't really know what tarot was and I had my first little deck, the moon always felt empowering to me because I love nighttime and I love the moon. So when I saw this card, I did have the little white book, but I hardly ever used it because it just seemed like just not really for me. And so this was always like one of my favorite, like bright spots in a reading. So the way I first started reading this was like how many people would see the sun card, which to me feels overpowering and like makes me feel hot. And like, I don't want all of that energy. And so this was like, you know, in terms of an archetype, the moon to me was always like about like magic and like
me too,
secrets, but not anything bad. Right.
I
so
know,
this is,
I agree with you. I say
yes. So this is like my, you know, a really good example of like how I personally use an archetype as like, this is a happy card to me, and it makes me want to go like walk around in the middle of the night and like find secrets, and it's not confusing to me at all. It actually gives me the space and time to think. So as the moon archetype, that is always not that I can't read what I would call the shadow side of this, but as an archetype, this is my like power place.
I find that there are people who have like really strong connections with the moon. I'm happy to be one of them. I think is a full moon. It's this week. I don't know if it's tonight or tomorrow.
The 26th, I think. Okay, tomorrow.
Yeah, so it's full moon is tomorrow. You know, like there are some people that have really strong connections with the moon, and then there are other people, like for instance, the full moon. I remember listening to Amy from Mystic Rose, and she was saying that her time, like where she feels like, I guess, empowered by the moon. I think I could be misunderstanding what she was saying, but it might not have been her. It was somebody was saying that they have they feel kind of like bad energy around the full moon, and then they feel the good energy around the new moon. I think it was Amy, but I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. I don't want to get that wrong. But and then for me, I feel like the full moon for me is a really powerful synchronous time. Like I have these really incredible dreams. I start to see numbers all the time. Like, I mean, that happens to me anyway, but like normal, like throughout the month, but, you know, just have these weird synchronicities that happen. And some of them are really powerful. You know, some of these synchronicities have actually changed my life or changed my thinking, you know, so, yeah, that's awesome. But there are people that think that the full moon is like bad omen time, you know. And there's a sort of a stigma about the full moon. It's like, oh, you know, if there's a lot of crime or whatever, like things are crazy, you know, there's that stigma of the full moon.
Oh yeah, so, and like nurses, like not all of my nurse friends, but like a lot of like people in the medical field will be like, oh, the ER is going to be full on the full moon, and like all of this stuff. But yeah, so we have a little Jamie saying, my friend Kelly F says there are no bad cards in tarot, and that's it too. Antoinette says 26 Scorpio full moon, thin veil, good psychic connection. So yeah, I tend to find that I have pretty strong dreams at the full moon, but also at like my birth moon is like waning gibbous, and I find that I have like really like psychic, I almost said psychotic, psychic dreams around that time.
Guess
Sometimes
what?
I do
I'm a
have
new moon.
psychotic dreams, but
I was born at the new moon, but I don't notice anything around the new moon. But you know what it is too? What last month I started to pay attention, or the last new moon, I started to really pay attention to things. I'm like, maybe it's because, the moon is very visual in the full moon.
yeah,
And it's just, there's two things that really stir me when I look at the water and the moon. If I look out at the ocean, I get very emotional. And if I look at the moon when it's full, I give the same kind of connection to the moon that I do with water. And I don't think that's an accident, but I don't even remember what the hell I was talking about. But basically, yeah, I don't remember. I lost my thought. It just went.
About
What was I saying? I can't even remember.
like the new moon, about your birth moon, but you don't really find.
Oh yeah,
that you
new
find
moon, yeah. Like so, my birth moon is the new moon, but
okay.
I just am more connected to the full moon, and I think it's because it's very visual.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see.
I wanted to show a deck too before we go.
Yes, please do that. Yeah, please do that.
Yeah, so we're talking about archetypes, and this is a deck that like really I don't see too often, but it's called Symbolin. And I think like we were talking about working with archetypes and using archetypes, and I just kind of wanted to show you guys what I do, like for instance, and what you can do with this deck. And maybe we can like play a game, and where people in the chat sort of, take a stab at what archetype they might see in the card,
Perfect.
So it's not a tarot deck, so it's kind of, it looks like a tarot deck, and it's very resembles a tarot deck, but there's no tarot structure. And a lot of people use this for like past live readings, or, so I happen to like just looking through it to kind of spot archetypes. So you have a woman here with, she's looking in the mirror, she's a very vain woman. Like what archetype would you associate with this? People in the chat. I'm just curious. I haven't really thought about it.
People in the chat?
Or anybody.
Yeah.
Do you see, does anything jump out at you?
I immediately think, I think Empress right away, and Chris says narcissist, which I can see that like the reflecting pool, right?
Yes.
So it's got that like.
She's got a mirror too. She's looking at.
Oh, okay. Chris is on it. Diane says maiden.
Yeah.
Chris is getting 4 of Cups energy. Antoinette says Empress, right? Because we have like all the growth. I'm using my mouse, like you guys can see. We have like all the growth behind with the trees and everything. But yeah, that reflecting pool does throw in that kind of narcissist vibe as well. And the mirror, which I didn't notice before. I thought it was a bird.
Yeah, like like the young lady, the maiden,
right,
the narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
It's really
again, it can be like with these. Justin and I were talking just for a few minutes prior. So they're just like with tarot or oracle or anything. There's light and shadow. So like I have these Caroline Miss archetypes, and there's a light attribute and a shadow attribute, right? So all of these things can kind of play in for sure.
Yeah. How about this one? So that's obviously a Hermes figure. He's got
the wings at the feet and the cape.
I think messenger, courier.
Could even be, I mean, because of like that direct symbolism, that was that's the first thing I think, but could also just be traveler, like, going along the path.
Traveler.
Wanderer.
Yep. The wanderer. The flying man.
Oh yeah. Jackie says page. Mm-hmm. Like setting out, that kind of starting out vibe. Page wands. Says Antoinette. Yeah, those are nice.
It's really an interesting deck. I love this. Okay, how about this one? So obviously this resembles the Emperor, but It's not the Emperor. I don't know what they call it. And I've never read the book. I have no idea. There's a lot of astrological stuff here. You got Leo, you know.
Oh yeah, okay. With like all the red energy too. And
That is
what's
Leo,
on his
right? That's the Leo sign, right up here. That's Leo.
I think so.
Which is weird because you know the Emperor in tarot is Aries, so it's a different. And then you have the Sun here, so you have the Leo and the Sun. You know.
So what my first thought was, because again, when I was looking at the this Mist deck, that I was thinking about the engineer archetype in relation to the Emperor, right?
Yes.
Someone who like creates from the structure. Antoinette says Emperor. Jackie says Emperor or King.
How about
Jamie says,
the good king?
Yeah, ruler, control. Yeah, definitely.
And like the shadow aspect of the king could be tyrant, you know, could be.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't get that from this. I get like good king, just king.
Right,
You know?
because he looks like a little relaxed, like a little relaxed. Do you know what I mean? It's not so like symmetrical and like uptight, like looks approachable.
Yeah. Okay, how about this one? They get interesting. They differ from tarot a little bit, so which is why.
I get Mary vibes from that, or like the Holy One, like the kind of like hope and promise. I get like tarot, like star vibes a little bit, even though this is sort of, you know, earthier, and there's like the harvest.
What Sagittarius and what's the one down below? Sagittarius and this thing here. I'm so bad with astrology.
I can't quite make it out, but Antoinette. Oh, Jackie said star as well. Hierophant, which is great because is there like smoke or something coming out? There's like a fire.
Yeah, she's making a second.
Okay.
I'm sure it's. I thought like Demeter from this. I thought like
like the earth.
Somebody, you know, the goddess Demeter is not an archetype, but you know that's what I thought. This would be because of the springtime vibes that you get from all the and there's some kind of sacrifice being made.
Yeah,
so I think like the devout, the what would be the devotee or the devout, the devout person, the maiden, you know.
Yeah. Diane says high priestess, which I love.
Yeah, definitely. That's part of the reason I like this deck. It's like it's somewhat tarot, but it's not. There's no labels on it. So like this card that I showed is very magician kind of vibe because it is.
With the whole
But in the same sense, it doesn't like it could work as whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And this, for instance, the lovers. So like it could be the lovers, but it doesn't say lovers, you know.
Oh yeah. That makes me think nine pence right away. That sort of, you know, like that could be part of her contentment, you know, togetherness and, you know, out in the garden, all of that. And then the mother, or from the last card, I was going to say devout or the faithful.
Yeah. Yeah. How about this one here? Let's show another one.
Oh, Jackie says 2 of Cups for that.
Oh yeah.
This one. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's kind of an easy one. How about this one? Well, this one's pretty easy too, but so this is not very tarot either. It's kind of there's some cards in here that really fit with tarot, and then there's some that don't. Right.
This one's making me think warrior, which we talked about last week here. So like that warrior energy. And that looks like the Aries symbol up there for that one. I can make that one out.
I'm gonna have to switch arms.
Jamie says hero.
Yes, absolutely.
Jackie says Knight of Swords, which I can definitely see that as well.
Yes.
Robin says Knight of Coins, right? Maybe referencing the shield.
Yeah.
And again, that would be really cool to connect to like with other cards in that deck or others. You know what I mean? I think that one would be cool to use as like clarifiers or enhancers or something like that to maybe bring out different aspects.
Yeah, there are no pips in this either, which is it's strange. It's like it's a full deck of this. So now I'm going to show you this one really quick.
Yeah.
I'll walk you
Oh,
through.
that's
So
beautiful.
that's like the divine feminine,
Right.
mother.
That reminds me of like the in between tarot with like the I don't have it, but I've seen it on some videos with like the in between of the high priestess and the empress.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Okay, and then how about this one here?
Oh, trickster, devil.
Illin.
Oh yeah. Here I'm typing it in, Jamie. It's called Symbolin.
Symbolon, yeah. It's really a great deck.
Oh yeah, and Robin says Empress or the Moon.
Here's the heart.
Oh, Diane said Deanne and Max. You're gonna make me all.
Oh, for the yeah, that's nice.
That's cute.
I want to show you some different ones, okay? Because
Yeah,
how about
I
this?
love this. Ooh, this makes me think. That's making me think of a movie, but I can't think what it is.
Makes me think of the Wizard of Oz with the Yellow Brick Road.
Yeah, and like the storm clouds behind.
The stubborn child, or the
Right.
like this
Like the mischief maker, you know what I mean? Like running
yeah.
away, like not being concerned. Yeah, not being concerned about the danger.
Archetype. It's the little jerk archetype.
Robin says, LOL, Deanne and Max again. Yeah,
Right.
that first one was like newborn, and that is definitely like current Max. Oh, very true.
Here's another interesting one. Like, there's just these scenes in here that.
Oh. Yeah, I like these little moments. Maybe like the rescuer or I would say protector, but because of the action, it's making me think of like, coming to the rescue. The frustrated athlete and the mean coach. Was that for
this one? Or?
I don't know. Antoinette says 5 pence here, right? Someone coming, like it could even be like that. I mean, these look like very much like in the physical realm, but it could even be like that spirit support or like someone that, comes to listen.
Yeah, the comforter or something like that.
Yeah, carer, heart healer.
I thought it could be the bearer of bad news too, because like he's there, he's a messenger, it's Hermes, so he's right. The psychopomp, the conveyor of information between the worlds and stuff and so forth, and he's basically a messenger. That's what he is.
Right. So it could be that initial moment, right? Like he gave the news,
and now she's upset. He's trying to comfort her.
Right.
I thought that. I don't know.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, this one's weird. This is a weird one.
I like weird. Okay. Oh. It's funny with the symbols at the bottom, like it almost looks like the supplicant. You know what I mean? Just like when you glance at it, it makes that same shape as like the Hierophant.
Or the devil.
Right. Like I get like devil or like this sacrificial, like
child sacrifice, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an archetype.
Oh yeah.
Sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Hierophant and the devil, says Regina. Sacrifice. Yeah, that's interesting. Like losing control.
Yeah. This one's kind of interesting.
Oh yeah. That reminds me, like I know it's sun and the moon, but like it reminds me a little bit of Persephone, like winter and spring, even though it's night and day, that sort of opposition, and that like both sides are needed.
Yes, could absolutely be Persephone, because she leaves and comes back. She comes back in the spring, she leaves for the winter.
Right, and that makes her like these two different people. Regina says temperance.
Yeah, I thought temperance too. I did think temperance.
Yeah, especially with like the flowy, like the water at the bottom. Zane says for the last card, the headpiece makes me think of Queen Marjorie's grandmother from Game of Thrones. That's very true. That shape and everything.
Oh, yeah, I got you. How about this one? There's
Duality.
a couple. We're almost out of time, so I'll show one.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely has that vibe. Cole Porter, Night and Day.
She's the Ice Queen or something, like the Ice Queen.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought with that castle in the back. That's amazing. Justice. High Priestess. Yeah, that's really cool.
How about this one?
Ooh.
It's like alien, stranger in a strange land.
Right. Could be like I was thinking like rebirth, like the eternal child, even though that seems like a bit more like ethereal and like what you're talking about, but that could be like just that constant like looking for something new that makes you feel new again.
Or like, the old saying, like the first human, because the first human wasn't born of a mother, was created. So maybe he's like stepping out of like the cosmic egg or whatever.
This is cool. Regina says origin stories.
Yeah.
Birth. Oh, Robin wants ice cream because you said ice queen. Oh, Antoinette says Superman. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it did remind me of the Superman story.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that's another, Regina said origin stories, which is kind of making me, that's one of those other like really huge overarching things that like ties in with archetypes almost as like its whole own like subset. That's really cool.
And just to give you an idea, I mean, like I have a ton. I think there are 90 cards in this deck or something.
Oh, nice.
And they're all just scenes like that. It's really a value. I mean, for your money, especially.
Yeah.
It's still available. I believe it's AGM Urania that prints this, and
okay.
It's an interesting deck. It's one that I've pulled out over the years quite a few times.
Yeah, I think that's really cool because it kind of gets like in between the archetypes, you know what I mean? Or makes that space that you can name them, Yeah.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Situations but also if you're into past lives and stuff, and you want to do like or some, you can almost use like a soul card even, like how people use soul cards.
Yeah.
You could just lay that on top of a reading and get like a certain vibe from it. It's just one of those decks that is, just you can use it in a million different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Antoinette's asking, is that to spark intuition? I think it definitely could be. It kind of puts you in the middle of the story. Sarah's here. Hi, Sarah. Thank you. We're just about to wrap up. So I'm going like right up to the minute because you know how I do. But anyway, I loved this so much, and I hope this was fun and helpful for all of you in some way. And anytime that you want to come on and talk about archetypes, maybe, we'll do 5 more Kim Cran's weeks, and you can come back and hang out with us if you want.
I would love to. No, anytime.
They probably get sick of me
earlier, so I'm up because I'm working again. So I'm like a normal human being. Like during COVID, I was like going to bed at 5 a.m. every night because I was up working decks or restorations or talking to people. But now I'm kind of on a normal schedule. I feel more human, so I like being up early, and it's great. So I don't mind coming on, and I gotta have you on my channel as well. So pretty soon we'll have to do it on my channel.
Yeah, definitely. This was so awesome. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
If any of you are headed over to the Mary L Zoom, have a great time. Have a happy Sunday. I'm going into vacation week, so I will be around. You'll probably see my face more this week, or maybe just whatever. So thank you, Justin, so much for being here. And thank you all. I will talk to you soon, probably before Friday, because again, I'm on vacation, so I'll probably be on to bug you soon. See you later. Thanks, you. Everyone.